Welcome to the Developing into Dad show. My name is Don Lykes, and I will be your host today. Our guest today is Dr. James Erkard.
Erkard.
And Mr. Erkard, we are happy to have you here today. Can you tell us a little bit about who you are as a father and as a husband?
Well, I'm a retired foot and ankle specialist, and I've had the joy of raising two sons. Um, my wife is Leslie, has a woman's boutique here in Akron, um, and the name is the Upper Room Boutique out in Fairlawn. Um, I was fortunate enough to have a great family, a family that gave me support. And children today lack support. They lack the father who's there for them to set the structure and a family who's there to support them in every way possible, mentally, physically, and spiritually. That was important for my father, to see that we had a balance. These kids today don't have that balance. They're raising themselves, or they have one parent who's working, and they don't have the support of an extended family. I had a very large family, extended family that supported me.
Okay. Great. So you told me a little bit about where you grew up, an interesting place here in Ohio. There's a lot of challenges growing up where you grew up. Can you share a little bit of?
Well, I grew up in Youngstown, and we all know what Youngstown was. It was very difficult in that there were a lot of negative things going on in Youngstown that you had to steer around and try to avoid. And I only avoided them because I had a praying grandmother and I had a father who's very strict. And I was always kept under control. I couldn't get out and get involved in things and involve myself in things that I was not supposed to do. Not that I was perfect. You know, we all fall short.
Mm-hmm.
But because of the support, they were there to keep me intact. And that was important to me. And through my experiences, I was able to transfer that support, that structure, over to raising my kids.
So you shared with me that your father was pretty strict, but he was also a man that took time.
He was no nonsense. He took time, no matter where he was, coming in from work. He always sat down to ask me how my day went, because he was always concerned about what did I do today? Did I read a book? Did I do this? Did I do that? And it was kind of difficult because I thought he didn't love me, but he did. He did those things out of love. And my family did it as well because they loved me and they expected things out of me. You see, your family's supposed to expect those things out of you. To whom much is given, much is required.
So you shared with me your experience in college, and you didn't graduate as you have
No.
a phrase.
I was a renegade. I did things that I wanted to do, and I didn't apply myself. And God doesn't make junk. We make ourselves junk by what we do and what we take on. I didn't graduate in a class of 365 magna cum laude. I graduated, thank you, Lottie. I graduated 300 out of 365. And had I believed that, and had I believed the negative seeds that were around me, that were sown to me, that my father walked in and said, there'll be no negative seeds here. God does not make junk. I took that attitude and went on and graduated from medical school and took national boards and scored well. I was not junk. I was God's child.
So you have some really interesting stories and theories about when fatherhood begins. Does fatherhood begin at birth, or does it begin at a different time?
You know, you got these pro-life that says life begins immediately. Life is that a baby is not born. That when it's first conceived, there's always that controversy over when life begins, and fatherhood begins at the day of conception, because the mother takes care of the child for 9 months. That baby's attached to her through the umbilical cord. So father is not a third wheel. he's still involved in the development of that baby, whether they realize it or not. Because the Bible says if you train the child in the womb, that means when that child is able to hear, he hears you when his ears are developing 5 to 6 months. He's hearing what you say, he's understanding, he's hearing about his environment, and you can test it. It's a testable fact that when I was sitting in bed one night reading, my oldest son was responding to what I was reading. He was sitting there, and every time I'd read, he'd move. My youngest son responded when I played music. Not just any music. I played jazz, I played R&B, but when I played classical, he responded. He was kicking back. And today, he's a classical pianist. My oldest son is a pilot in the Air Force. He flies KC-135s, he refuels fighters in the air. He's a 28-year-old major. But I was reading to him. And when he was born, he would always get a book and sit on my lap. And I read to him.
So you shared a story with me about your son who is a pilot.
Mm-hmm.
Can you share with the audience a little bit about what that conversation was like?
He was actually 3 years old. And we were watching the space shuttle take off, and he stood there and watched and asked, "What was that?" And I told him it was a space shuttle. He proceeded to ask me a few questions that were very pointed, and he asked, "What does it do?" I said, "It takes people in outer space." "What is space?" And after explaining it to him as simplified as I could, he looked at it, he intellectualized it, and he turned to ask me a question. He said, "What's that red stuff coming out from the bottom of it?" I said, "Thrust." He said, "Is it hot?" I said, "Yes." "Will it burn you?" "Yes." He then looked at it again, and he said to me, "Daddy, can you help me fly this?" And I asked him one question: "Who am I?" He said, "Your daddy." He shook my hand and walked away. Then I realized that I had just had an adult conversation with a 3-year-old. And from that day forth, I never said anything else to him. I never had to make him study. I never had to indulge him. I was always encouraging him. And he told me, "I want you to sign this paper. I'm going to this program. Sign that paper. I'm going to this program." He studied. He went to college and high school and an engineering school at the same time, because he was turned on from the time he was 3. So when babies are born, there are no instructions. We have to listen to them, because they will tell you exactly what they want and where they're going. We just have to as parents, be able to listen to them and understand what they're telling us.
So you share with me about you're an artist, both and a scholar. You're a doctor, a medical
Yeah,
doctor.
I think with both sides of my brain, kind of. I have an artistic side and I have a scientific side. And God has a sense of humor. He split me down the middle and made James one and Gabriel the other. I eat peanut butter and jelly. James liked peanut butter. Gabriel eats jelly. Gabriel's the artist. James is the scientist. So you take all their qualities and put them back together, you have me. God has a sense of humor.
Absolutely. So I love the part where you talked about the support in your family. Your father never used any type of negative words to when he spoke to you. How did that impact your life, having that positive support from your family?
Family support is the most important thing once a child is born. The Bible says that there's life and death in the tongue, so you never speak negative things to that child, because he will take them in and visualize them. If you speak good things to him, you tell him that he's going to be somebody. If you make him shoot for an A and he gets a B, he's still good in God's eyes. Never ever sow negative seeds to your kids. These kids out on the street, they do things because nobody's ever loved them, showed them they love them, or tried to support them. And without support, you're lost. And families today have to learn to support their children. Remember, that baby was given to you on loan by God. The Bible says the baby is a gift from God. It's not yours to keep. You raise that child, and at some point in time when he becomes 18, you give him back to God because he's not yours. He's only on loan.
Wonderful. So, Dr. Erkard, if you could give some advice to some younger fathers out there. Now, in your hands, you and your wife, let's make sure we include your wife in this whole thing, right?
Yes, she made a big part.
And so you and your wife have done a wonderful job raising two magnificent sons. I actually saw a tape of your son on YouTube playing as a concert pianist. Can you tell us how folks could look that up? What would they look up on YouTube?
Just type his name in, Gabriel Erkard, Gabriel, Gabriel Erkard, Erkard, on YouTube. You'll see him playing at a concert at Berkeley where he went to school.
Wonderful. And as I was watching the tape, you asked me a question. You said, "Do you see any music on there?" I was like, "No, I don't see any music." But he was playing like Beethoven. He was really, really terrific.
He plays from his heart.
Okay.
He doesn't need music, sheet music. He writes music, but he doesn't use sheet music because it's a gift that was given to him when he was in the womb. I just helped him develop it. And God is now able to let you see it.
Yes. So the most important thing to young fathers, if you had to give, we have a few minutes left,
Okay.
what advice would you give to young dads out there, starting families?
Accept the child when the child is conceived. Train him in the womb. Support him when he gets here. Be supportive. Don't be an absentee dad, because God ordained that we should have a mother and a father. Mother can do only a certain part, but only a father can raise a boy into a man. And basically, pray about it, because I had a praying grandmother that I know that just prayed for me day and night. The Bible said pray unceasingly, and she prayed unceasingly. And I'm not going to say I was a goody two-shoes. I had my days, but I also had support and structure that I had to work within. And once you got a structure, that you structure that child's life to work within, you then can get the kind of results to whom much is given, much is required.
Well, we want to thank you for being a guest here on our show. You and your wife have done an amazing job raising. You have some wonderful concepts about fatherhood, and I really enjoyed meeting you.
Thank
and
you.
hope to have you back someday.
God bless.
So that'll end our show. We want to thank you for being here with us today, and remember that dads, that you don't have to be a perfect dad. All you have to do is try to be a better father in whatever you do. This is Don Lykes saying goodbye.